You're welcome. This is the Pulse here on Joy News. My name is Elton Broby. Now let's start with the 2024 budget presented by the Finance Minister yesterday. Today we begin with a quest to break down details of the budget statement presented by Finance Minister Ofori-Atta. The country is expected to reach a debt relief deal in the coming weeks from its official creditors to qualify for disbursement under the $3 billion IMF bailout. But exactly how are the policies in the budget crafted to ensure a stable economy? After Mr. Ofori-Atta announced that the country had turned the corner and will now witness higher growth and lower inflation. More on this when we engage development economist Dr. Domfe on this. Right now, we'll speak to break down the numbers for you when Isaac Kofi Ajay joins me in here. But here are some highlights from yesterday's presentation on the floor of Parliament by Finance Minister Ofori-Atta.
Mr. Speaker, tax reliefs. Our approach to tax policy since 2017 was to give significant relief to the private sector until expenditure pressures from 2020 required a more aggressive approach. It is important to note that in the short term, fiscal sustainability requires that we improve our tax ratios significantly, otherwise our long-term competitiveness will be eroded. As we all know, our country's 13% tax to GDP ratio is far below our peers. Our target is 18 to 20%, and we are on course for 16%, hoping to be achieved this year. In that regard, it is difficult to implement all the structural reforms and tax reliefs needed to immediately lower and/or eliminate certain tax handles. However, I assure this august House that we have heard we believe in lower taxes as a government for industry, and we are working at this aggressively with the GRA and to be cemented with the Standing Committee of the Mutual Prosperity Dialogue. Mr. Speaker, further to the above, the following reliefs have been prioritized for implementation. To extend, Mr. Speaker, the zero rate of VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on import of electric vehicles for public transportation for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to waive import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles imported by registered EV assembly companies in Ghana for a period of 8 years. Mr. Speaker, to extend zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for 2 more years. Mr. Speaker, to zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant import duty waivers for raw materials for the local manufacture of sanitary pads. Mr. Speaker, to grant exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Speaker, a VAT flat rate of 5% to replace the 15% standard VAT rate on all commercial properties will be introduced to simplify administration. To address the negative externalities of plastic waste and pollution, government will review and expand the environmental excise duty to cover plastic packaging and industrial and vehicle emissions. Mr. Speaker, the Stamp Duty Act 2005, Act 689, has not been reviewed since enactment in 2005. To realign the rate with current economic realities, government in 2024 will review the rates and fees for stamp duties. The bands subject to ad valorem taxes will be expanded, while the specific rates will be reviewed. Mr. Speaker, a simplified tax return will be introduced as a means of promoting voluntary compliance as part of the modified taxation scheme for individuals in the informal sector. This approach will make it easier for taxpayers to fulfill their tax obligations to the state. Total revenue and grants is projected at 176.4 billion Ghana cedis, 16.8% of GDP, as we move towards our 18% target. And this is underpinned by permanent revenue measures, largely tax revenue measures amounting to 0.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, Total expenditure is projected at 226.7 billion, 21.6% of GDP. This projection reflects a reduction of 6.1 percentage points of GDP in total expenditure commitment basis compared to the outturn in 2022. This large decrease comes from the combination of fiscal consolidation efforts of 4.9 percentage points of GDP, reflecting an adjustment in revenue by 1.1 percentage point and primary expenditure by 3.9 percentage points of GDP. The cedi has stabilized against the US dollar since early 2023. Both a year to date, Mr. Speaker, a year to date cumulative depreciation of 25% compared to 54% in 2022. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the cedi has only depreciated by 6.4% on cumulative basis since February 2023, compared to, Mr. Speaker, 53.9% over the same period in 2022. The stability of the cedi largely reflects the positive impact from the restoration of economic activity, including robust economic growth, improvement in the current account position, improvement in forex liquidity following the IMF ECF inflows, Bank of Ghana's domestic gold purchase program, reduced speculative forex demand as market confidence rebounds. Mr. Speaker, on social spending, the government's flagship free senior high school and TVET programs continues to create and expand access to secondary school education in the country. In a generation's time when we have a more educated population which sustains social mobility and cohesion, we appreciate the significance of these decisions. In the year under review, we continue to support, Mr. Speaker, far from this, in the year under review, we continue to support a total of 448,000 first-year senior high school students, bringing the total beneficiaries for 2023 academic year to 1.3 million students. In 2024, the implementation of this transformative initiative will continue. Mr. Speaker, we continue feeding grants for over 7,500 students in special schools and capitation grants to all public basic schools across the country.
A lot of figures there by the Finance Minister, Ofori-Atta, looking into 2024 and beyond. The issues about social intervention programs for the vulnerable in our society, the hope that government is seeking to instill in the greater populace for 2024, and of course, a lot of figures, projections, government hoping to achieve whatever going into 2024. These are the issues that we're going to break it down for you, and then later we'll have Dr. George Domfed, Development Economist and Senior Research Fellow at the University of Ghana, join us to try and make sense of all the things that were said by the Finance Minister. But what really are the issues that should dominate discussion, that should attract your attention? Let us break it down to the simplest of forms for you to appreciate the 2024 budgets. And my colleague here, Kofi joins me here in the studio. Kofi, so break it down for us. What really are the issues?
Also, before we even go to the smart wall, let me start with some key important figures that we need to talk about. Because usually budget is summarized in three forms: your expenditure, your revenue, and the deficit, and probably how you are going to finance the deficit. So let me break that one down first. So in 2024, what we know is that government is hoping to spend 226.7 billion Ghana cedis and raise 176.4 billion cedis.
So that's a funding gap right there.
Absolutely.
Over 60 billion Ghana cedis.
So first, look at it this way. If you just do the expenditure on commitment basis, then you have a budget deficit of 50.3 billion Ghana cedis. Now, if you add clearance of arrears, then the deficit increases from that 10.3 billion cedis to now over 61 billion Ghana cedis. So that is what we are going to deal with in 2024. If you look at the tax revenue, let's say the revenue that we are hoping to generate in 2024, about 77% of this is supposed to come from tax revenue. If you look at the figure, it's around 135.92 billion Ghana cedis. That is the amount of money we want to raise from tax revenue, 77% of the total revenue. Non-tax revenue is around 14 or 15 billion cedis. Oil revenue, the same 15 billion cedis. Grants, around 3 billion Ghana cedis, and other revenues around 7.56 billion cedis. Expenditure, very important, because once you start talking about revenue, you need to map it to expenditure.
Right.
Expenditure for 2022, just like I said, is over 226 billion.
2024, you mean?
2024, 226 billion. Now, if you break this down, two line items will catch your attention, as they've always been.
Clearly, compensation is one of them.
Absolutely. Compensation of employees.
Yes.
And we know labor is going to enjoy an increment in base pay. How much is government going to spend in 2024? 63.68 billion Ghana cedis.
And represent, in terms of percentage?
Yeah, it's if you combine that with interest payments, we are looking about 67% of the total revenue already gone.
67%.
Absolutely.
Leaving 33 to do all other things.
All other things. So if you spend on compensation for employees, which includes wages and salaries and other remunerations, and then also interest payments, which in 2024 will be around 55 or 56 billion Ghana cedis.
But we are seeking to restructure our standard.
Exactly.
Why are we still committing so much money into paying interest?
You need to
interest
budget.
On payment?
You need to budget. This around, let's say, $6 billion.
Right.
You've still not been able to get the needed financing assurances from your external creditors. You need to budget.
So if we are able to get the needed
then
financing
this free
agreement,
space becomes available to you.
then this becomes savings for us.
Yes,
Okay.
about $6 billion if you're able to do it at both the domestic and external. And mind you, we can't restructure all our debt.
Right.
So we will probably pay, but not as to the level that we've actually budgeted. Now let's go to the smart wall and do some analysis. And first start with the famous statement from the budget. Let's look at that one. The famous statement from the budget where the finance minister said that he has actually turned the corner. So I want to read. It says, I want to stress at this juncture that Ghana has paid its dues, has turned the corner and getting back on track. Getting back on track, maybe he's looking at indicators like inflation. He mentioned the CD that has not really depreciated if you compare it to 2022 when it could move from just 12 cedis to 13 cedis, discrete movement. So the finance minister says, if you look at some key indicators, then it's safe to say that Ghana has actually turned the corner.
And he provided reasons why he came to this conclusion. One of them is the fact that government had taken a decision to seek the support of the IMF to stabilize the economy. And we got that deal. So that is a plus for him. That is turning the corner.
It's a plus.
Inflation has come down from somewhere around 50 to now 35.2.
Good, 54,
that is a plus.
54.1.
That is a plus for them.
Yeah.
There appears to be some stability in the currency regime. That for him is a plus for him. That is also turning the corner. For him, generally, the economy appears to have stabilized.
Yes.
Growth is expected to ease up slightly. That for him is also turning the corner.
Yes, because I mean, you have growth right now above 3%. It's way above what we actually projected that we're going to do in both the first and second half of the year. So very positive news for government. But the next slide will tell you a different story, which probably people are now talking about it. If you look at the next slide, which is the 8 tax exemptions that we've all been talking about. 8 tax exemptions.
In fact, I spoke to some manufacturers this morning off record, and they are so excited. They are operating in the one district, one factory enclave. Some of them are into fast-moving consumer goods. And for them, this is a welcome news because it helps them to save. It helps them to, make some savings
down on cost
on some of these. And so that for them is a plus. I don't know what you make of what the finance minister announced yesterday, even though we are also hearing from Guta that, what they wanted to hear, it didn't come true.
Let's look at the next slide, maybe to tell a different story. We still have some of the 8 taxes. Next slide. Let's look at that one as well. Yes. So we've been doing some analysis for you to look at some of the key fiscal performances in 2023. So 2023, between January and August, so we are talking about the first 8 months of the year, this was the targeted, total revenues and grants.
82.2 billion.
That's provisional data, 82.2 billion.
And we're able to recover 79.1.
79.1. That's a negative. It means that there's a vast difference between what we projected versus what we actually got. Now, this is because some key tax components or handles, like the e-levy, we've been speaking about it, which we've not been able to get what we were looking for. Even the pollution tax, I've looked at the first and second quarter data. We are not really getting what we actually projected to get. Another thing. So total expenditure really good. We've been able to cut down. We said we're going to spend 121.8. We've ended up spending 104. Positive news over there. Positive for fiscal balance as well in the first 8 months of 2023. Now let's look at other key issues where we've looked at real GDP, inflation, which right now the target is somewhere around 15% in 2024. Elton, do you think we can achieve 15% inflation?
Well, we are 35.2%.
Yes.
And we are some have said that we are being overly ambitious in terms of the target we set for us at 15%. But we came from a single digit and then we went to the 54%. It is possible. It means that we need to do a lot more to bring it down.
Yes.
And maybe when we are joined by the economists, we're able to tell us what government intends to do to ensure systematic reduction in inflation. But at 35% to 15% by the end of 2024, that looks something that will be difficult to achieve. But let's see how.
Well, it looks possible anyway. Do you think? I think it looks possible because, from 54, just like you said, to now 35, if we work with the IMF on board, I'm sure that 15%.
But this may look sexy for me. But then, look at food inflation and how that is hitting the ordinary Ghanaian.
Yes.
So this may look quite good.
It looks too aggregated.
But in terms of how you are relating to it and how that is hitting you in terms of food inflation, at around 44%, it is hitting hard on household.
We were speaking about the top 20 items that we spoke about the last time, and you see some consumables that we use almost every day at home, like sanitary pads, like baby food, dog meat. People always say that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even our banku is
yeah, exactly. Flour and condo and all of those things, all recording inflation rates above 50%. Even common tea bag has an inflation rate around 91%.
Yes.
And that's, if you do the disaggregation, you realize that the 35.1% or 0.2% inflation rate looks a bit blanket. And at the disaggregated level, that's when you see how people are actually coping with the situation. Let's look at other key, issues in the budgets, and then one other slide. Let's look at that one as well. Okay, so this is where we've spoken about this already. We spoke about the revenue here, comparing it to 2023. So what you see in blue is 2023, and in yellow is 2024. And so, Elton, just look at this in terms of expenditure. In 2024, we are hoping to spend this amount.
226.7 billion.
And if you compare it to what we have in 2023, there's some huge variance.
Yes, we are spending more.
We are spending more.
Even though we are seeking to cut down on expenditure.
Computers should be more than 20%, right?
Absolutely,
close to 30%.
Yes.
And just look at this one. In terms of the fiscal balance at, commitment basis, last year or this year, projection was 47. This year, 53 billion Ghana cedis. Some 3 billion cedis difference. Let's go another slide and see what we can also see in there. So we've been speaking about the external sector, where the finance minister says that Ghana's external sector performance will largely depend on the conclusion of negotiations with the country's external creditors.
Yes.
It simply tells you that once we are talking about Ghana's external sector in 2024, we are actually hinging it on agreements and negotiations with external creditors. Because we showed you that in the budget line items, there are two components. especially we are talking about interest payments. If we are not able to reach an agreement with external creditors, we are supposed to pay close to $3 billion next year in terms of interest payments and charges alone. We've not spoken about amortization. We've not spoken about other loans that we've taken, some of which are collateralized. And so this is why it's important, because once these guys, external creditors, they agree that they'll give us the needed financing assurance, it tells you that we have that fiscal space to breathe in 2024. Less pressure will be placed on the CD. We will not see the CD depreciate.
No, but again, the most important thing that we need to point out is that you made mention of the fact that if you are unable to come to some agreement with our external creditors, we are likely to pay over $3 billion
$3 billion,
to those we owe. Then it makes sense why the IMF will insist that you need to secure an agreement with your external creditors before you come to us for the release of the second tranche. Otherwise, whatever money we'll give you, will end up going to pay for your debt. And then the effects you want to have in your country may not be felt. So this is very crucial.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing also about this is that this discussion has dragged on for so long, for so long. And every day we hear that in the coming weeks we're going to reach an agreement. China is on board. They have set up the OCC.
It's been on board for a long time.
Exactly,
and have to reach
it's unclear when an agreement will be reached. Because take it or leave it, even the government has made it clear that they are not working with the timelines. The $600 million is crucial.
In fact,
it's crucial for
whether you
the
like
sustenance
it or
of
not. You have to work within a certain timeline because you are talking about, an economy. And if you take time out of an economy, what are you trying to talk about? Because you are talking about period, fiscal years, and expenditure, or actually what you need in a fiscal year is actually, contingent on you reaching an agreement with your external creditors. You have a balance of, mind you, the reason why we've gone to the IMF is because of our balance of payment issues.
Yes.
We can't afford that $15.5 billion. We can't generate that on our own. And IMF and World Bank and all the other development partners coming on board, they can't also give us $15.5 billion. One country, no. How much would they give to the other countries? And so they are aware that the amount they are giving to us is not enough. That is why they need the commitment of other creditors that we annually spend huge sums of dollars in just the payment of interest on our loans. It is the reason why it is important
that this is secured.
Exactly.
Well, the finance minister makes the point that talks quite advanced, and he is hoping that in the coming
I'm very happy about that.
Yes, in the coming weeks, an agreement will be reached so that the IMF board can now consider the release of the second tranche for Ghana.
Let's go on the other slide and see what we are. Well, so we are looking at the exchange rates. These are the key component that will determine Ghana's exchange rate fate in 2024. I'm not the one saying this, is in the budget speech. It says that, well, if we are able to get the IMF supported program, which we have, that is going to help us, the CD, stabilize. Then we are also expecting some inflows from the cocoa syndication loan.
Yes.
You want to say anything about that?
Of course. I mean, the finance minister again yesterday said that if the syndication or syndicated loan is secured, that will also help the economy.
Yeah.
But even as we know, the cocoa board is struggling to get the banks to raise the needed financing. And
it's all because right now, government is asking its, commercial creditors. These are banks; they are commercial creditors. Of course, we put ourselves in a position which we are saying that it will be difficult for us to honor our debt obligations. Yes.
That's what everybody is skeptical in terms of giving you money.
Of course, and they also be looking at the credit ratings. That where are you in terms of, and then your ability to pay back and all of those things. But the finance minister also said that the second tranche of the IMF is also very important in stabilizing the CD, mining inflows, and this one, continuation of the gold for oil program. Very, very important.
Yeah.
Where government has indicated in the budget speech that they made some significant savings by introducing this program plus other programs and policies. So it's important.
The claim is that the reason why we've also witnessed some stability at the pumps is because it can be attributed to the
Gold for Oil
program. And so I mean, in terms of what it looks on the books, it will sound exciting and convincing, but what really on the ground is what people are interested in. And I guess that very soon we'll get we'll bring on Professor Domfe to take us through
if
this is indeed a set of policies that will take us from the state of our economy to a better place. Those are the questions that will be asking
absolutely.
The professor.
Let's look at one more slide and see. So according to the finance minister, we have successfully concluded, this is important anyway, the domestic debt exchange or program and making steady progress on external debt restructuring.
Steady is not enough. We have to make quick progress on this.
So Elton is saying that we don't need steady, right?
We need quick progress.
Quick progress, and very emphatic. We need, actual restructuring.
Exactly.
We don't need assurance. I'll give you today, the next day I won't give you, all of those things. We need to be able to bring all our creditors to the table, speak to them, tell them our problems, and our proposal should also be feasible.
Sure.
I mean, because you are asking for 20 to 40% haircuts, how much should Zambia and other countries who also need haircuts ask for? They will all be watching Ghana, and they are looking at what the commercial guys will do for Ghana, and when they also go there to ask for forgiveness, they'll say, I mean, you did this for Ghana.
Do the same thing
you also do for us? So it's important. For me, this is the most important word for me. Successful conclusion of the domestic debt.
Yes.
We are hoping that maybe next year we don't see government coming to say that
let's do another one.
Come for another haircut or come for another exchange. We are hoping that the exchange will end here, and we'll trust government where that it has been successfully concluded. Let's look at the next slide, which talks about the Big Five exchange. So this is the DDEP that we've been speaking about. Now, we've enjoyed some fiscal space, but where did they come from? Okay, so the first leg of the DDEP that we did, the target was to free up 90.7 billion Ghana cedis. We ended up getting 87. It means that the participation rate was around 90 billion. So if you go through all of these, about 5 of them, you see the savings that we did. And this is why the Bank of Ghana actually made a lot of losses. You see Bank of Ghana non-marketable bonds. They targeted 70.9
billion.
And they restructured everything. 100% participation. So those are some of the key highlights in the 2024 budgets. I'm sure if you go on my Joe Online, we have
everything is there. I'm sure, you can follow
10 takeaways.
And it makes sense for yourself on the matters. Kofi, thank you very much. Let's now analyze the issues presented by Kofi again, of course, presented by the Finance Minister of the Republic, Ofori-Atta. And I'm sure from the Finance Ministry workers' perspective, he did a great job, and that's how come he was welcomed with such applause when he made his way to the Finance Ministry after the presentation in Parliament. But what are the real issues? Are these the policies that is going to help the country get out of the current economic doldrum to the place where people can say that we are out of the woods and now we can now look to the future with some kind of positivity? Dr. George Jomfe is a development economist and senior research fellow at the University of Ghana. He joins us via Zoom for us to make sense of some of the things that we were told yesterday. Doug, you're welcome to the pulse here on Joy News. And if you can kindly unmute for me so that we can hear you loud and clear.
Sorry. And let me say good afternoon, my brother.
Yes, good afternoon.
I've really enjoyed your discussions.
We appreciate that very much. Let me pick your initial reaction to the 2024 budgets. The Finance Minister described it as including victory. Is that the same feeling you get?
Yes, looking at my brother, and let me first of all begin by saying very good afternoon to our cherished viewers and listeners as well. So I will pick it from where he took it as a Minister of Economics. We all know that 2017, things were not all that well with Ghana. At the time he became Minister of Finance, we had quite a number of challenges. We haven't forgotten where we came from, April 2015, when we had to subscribe to an IMF extended credit facility. And we were doing well under the program, especially when he came to take over as the manager. We did really well until, unfortunately, after 2019, other things happened, and we couldn't, as it were, keep up with the performance. If you look at inflation that has become a problem, at the end of December 2019, we were doing 7.9%, and the 7.9% happened to be the lowest since March 1992. That is 28 years. So for 28 years, we have recorded the lowest inflation. The economy was growing steadily. I should say we were doing well. Debt to GDP ratio had been contained well below 70% threshold. So you were not in debt crisis, I should say, even though the vulnerabilities were very real. But I think looking at our performance, there were serious indications that we were on the right path. But coming to the year 2020, 2021, 2022, all has not been well with us. We have struggled as an economy, especially in the year 2022, when the GDP, debt to GDP ratio was unsustainable, way above 70% threshold. The economy was growing at 3.2%. That was okay, but at the beginning of the year, we saw $1 being exchanged for 6 cedis 20 pesos. But in October, you would exchange $1 for 17 cedis, and that was really very bad. It affected fuel prices. At the same time, global price for fuel oil went up, and it really affected us here. At the point, you needed to buy a liter of diesel for 23 cedis. It wasn't good at all. And because of this inflation, the year ended with inflation of 54.1%, the highest in over 25 years. And so if today we have seen inflation dropping to 35.2%, we have seen the economy growing at the first half of the year at 3.2%, especially agricultural sector doing well around 6.2%. You can only say that compared to last year, we are doing well, and that we are back on track, getting to where we were in the year 2019.
But doctor, even if you want to still look at the figures as we have it now, you went back to 2023, and then the inflation has come down from 54 to now 35.2. The exchange has also come down from around 20 to now 12. At the pumps, we've seen reduction in fuel prices, but they are still high.
Yeah, really, I agree with you. They are still high because you see, apart from the exchange rate that has been stabilized, and also the global market prices that have also witnessed some stability, we shouldn't forget that we have 7 levies, placed on the fuel. And so definitely we wouldn't get it what we want. And now government is not in control. The sector has been deregulated. And so the BDCs, they are private individuals who go out there to buy oil and come back to Ghana to sell. And so, yes, we are not getting it as we want. But compared to last year, I think things are far better. And these days, we hardly see
we appear to be losing Dr. George Domfe because of connection issues. We'll try and re-establish contact with him, and then we'll have some few questions for him as we digest the issues presented by the finance minister in the 2024 budget. Dr. Domfe, can you hear me? Right, so we don't have him. We'll re-establish contact with him, and then we'll still have some few questions that we need to ask. The finance minister presented what he considers to be a victory budget. There's hardship in the country. That is an undeniable fact. The question is, the policies announced in the 2024 budget, are these the ones that will help stabilize the economy and then bring some relief to the Ghanaian public? These are questions that we need to ask and we need to find answers to. Right, so we'll deal with that, plus other issues here on the budget. The minorities already been talking, clearly giving an indication of the kind of position they will present when the debate starts on the floor on Monday. They will start the post-budget workshop tomorrow, Friday, conclude it on Sunday, and then the debate on the budget will start on Monday. And then we also will be presented with the comprehensive documents covering the 2024 budget, the estimates for the various ministries. Our government hopes to raise the additional 12 billion cedis, and by what means. These are some of the issues that will dominate the discussions on the floor on Monday when the budget debate actually starts. MPs also have the opportunity to now scrutinize the allocations to the various ministries, departments, and agencies for 2024. Our government seeking to raise additional revenue to finance this project. We've just walked you through the revenue target for 2024, and that's about 174 billion Ghana cedis. 174 billion Ghana cedis. Yet government is seeking to spend over 222 billion Ghana cedis. That will leave you a funding gap of over 60 billion Ghana cedis. How is government seeking to fund this gap? How is government seeking to fill this gap? The over 60 billion cedis that it has identified as whole in the budget. These are concerns that everybody have, and these are concerns that we need to find answers to. But you are watching the pulse here on Joy News. We're also live on all our social media platforms. Soon we'll also take you to the Ashanti region, where mining activities are expected to take off within the Yinahini Forest Reserve in 2024. We also will bring you the state funeral that was organized in memory of former First Lady Theresa Kufuor. The burial service, the Thanksgiving service, and the burial itself will take place in the Ashanti Regional Capital, Kumasi, tomorrow, Friday, all the way till Sunday. But we're at the State House where the state funeral, actually, I beg your pardon, took place. So we have all of this coming your way right here on the Pulse on Joy News. We'll take a short break and return.